the Orange Free State. But Ronald always thought of himself as English. His parents, Arthur and Mabel Tolkien, had moved to South Africa from England only the year before, after Arthur got a job at a bank. Ronald's father was often away on business, leaving his son in the care of his mother and servants. The first summer Ronald spent in his new hometown was one of the hottest that anyone could remember. As a baby, Ronald had to wear frilly white dresses, called pinafores, to keep cool. In letters to relatives, his mother boasted that he looked like an elf or a fairy. Even worse than the heat were the bugs and beasts. Flies buzzed about constantly, and locusts devoured crops in the fields. A family of wild monkeys lived next door. One day, a monkey vaulted the fence and rampaged through the Tolkien's garden, shredding 3 of Ronald's pinafores hanging on the clothesline. Then, to make matters even worse, baby Ronald got kidnapped. Well, sort of. Some might say he was just borrowed for a while. Apparently, a servant named Isaac was so taken by the adorable Tolkien infant that he took Ronald to show him to the people of his village. After spending the night with Isaac and his family, Ronald was back in his crib the next morning, unharmed. Although he always claimed he had no memory of the incident, as an adult, J.R.R. Tolkien often wrote about characters who get captured or kidnapped. One childhood memory did stick with Ronald forever. You could even say that it left quite an impression on him, with its teeth. One very hot summer day, as he was just learning to walk, Ronald was strolling through the garden when he stumbled on a hairy, black, 8-legged creature the size of a dinner plate. Ronald had no idea what it was, but it looked mean. He would later learn that it was called the Hercules baboon tarantula, and it was one of the largest, heaviest, and rarest spiders in the world. Baboon tarantulas are usually not aggressive, but they will defend themselves if they feel threatened, as Ronald soon found out. In his haste to back away, he startled the critter. It scuttled forward and bit him on the foot. "Ow!" Ronald cried, wincing in pain. It felt as if his foot was on fire. Shrieking, he took off running into the high grass. Lucky for him, his nurse was nearby. When she realized what had happened, she scooped up Ronald into her arms. "Tarantula!" she shouted. And then she took her first good look at the itchy red mark the spider had left behind. The nurse lay Ronald on the ground. To help him, she lifted his leg and placed his swollen foot in her mouth, sucking out the spider venom. When she had drained the wound of the poison, she threw Ronald over her shoulder and carried him, like a sack full of flour, back home to his mother. "Mrs. Tolkien! Mrs. Tolkien!" she called out as she entered the house. "A tarantula bit your son!" When Mabel Tolkien saw the welt on her son's foot, she took him from the nurse's arms and asked Isaac to fetch some bandages and lotion. After the wound was dressed, Ronald began to tell her the full story of what had happened. "It was a spider as big as a dragon," he reported. And for the rest of his life, he would always be terrified of spiders. One day, a few years later, after Ronald's family had moved back to England, he was sitting by himself, dreaming up characters for the first story he would ever write. He immediately imagined the most fearsome creature he could think of, a dragon. But in his mind, he may have been picturing a different kind of creature altogether, a critter like the one that had frightened him out of his wits that summer afternoon in South Africa. Ronald didn't remember all the details of that fateful day, but he never forgot what it felt like to run scared through the high, dry grass. J.K. Rowling. A Storybook Life. She created the amazing character Harry Potter, but her time in school was anything but magical. J.K. Rowling had to fend off a bully, defy the low expectations of her teachers, and overcome her own shyness on the way to becoming one of the world's most famous authors. One summer day in 1990, a 24-year-old aspiring writer named Joanne Rowling found herself stuck for 4 hours on a train bound for London. As she gazed out the window, an idea for a new character popped into her head. He was a boy wizard, and though she didn't yet have a name for him,